and welcome to A New Dawn. I am Dawn, and today we're going to discuss my take on Pooh TF. Black women are starting to come out more and more to share their stories. Let's just put it on the table. I am not trying to duplicate anyone's creation. I have just been more and more encouraged to continue sharing my story. In no way, shape, or form have I experienced the level of lying, but I can honestly relate. But there's a lot of things that are not similar to my experience at all. I just want to talk about it. Not really going into detail about my opinion on their situation, but kind of alluding to our situations as Black women and the things that we put up with, the things that we choose to deal with, and why. And I'm really going to relate it to my own story and my own experiences. So let's get into it. So if you've watched any of my videos in the past, you will know that I have been in a domestic violence relationship, and I will be the first one to admit it now. Let's just put it out there and be 100. I knew for a fact from the very beginning that I was dealing with a shitty ninja. I knew it. I knew it in the very beginning, and instead of me chucking up the deuces and running far, far, far away from this person, I decided to stay. And I stayed for several reasons. I actually did like him. He was a real cool person when I met him. He also came into my life at a time where I was actually really going through a lot. I was dealing with infertility due to a history of uterine fibroids. I had already had one surgery to remove the fibroids when I met him. I actually ended up having another procedure shortly after I met him to remove more fibroids that were discovered after my first surgery. I had a job, a really good job actually. I was kind of starting my career over. I had been a hairstylist for almost 10 years prior to me having surgery. In Dallas is where I met my ex, and then during the course of our relationship we moved to Houston. We were together for a total of 5 years. We were in Dallas together for a year, and there were absolutely red flags. I stayed around for a number of reasons. Number one, we met, and within a week of us dating, we were in a relationship. I have never moved that quickly with any relationship in my entire life, and I won't do it again. We did meet on POF. 0 out of 10 recommend. I'll never do it again. In fact, I'm pretty much done with dating websites altogether. Let's just put that out there. So I do believe that he felt like, for me, marriage was the big thing. Marriage was the goal. It was, but it wasn't the most important thing to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I wanted to be married at the time. I still would like to get married, but it's not a priority. I'll put it to you like that. I feel like, first of all, it's a lot of garbage out here in the dating pool. It's a lot of trash out here in these streets. And I do know that there are some really amazing guys out there. I have guy friends who are really rather dope. I'm not in a rush to get married. For me, if it happens, it happens. I didn't used to feel like that prior to being in a relationship with my ex. I am totally okay with being by myself until the right person comes along. At the time that I was with him, I wasn't okay with being by myself. I had been by myself for such a long time that I was just over it. For me, the number one goal was always, I want to have a family. I felt like this may be my last opportunity to try to have a child naturally anyway. Long story short, we ended up getting together. This man lied to me from the very beginning of the relationship till the end. Somewhere in there, it became abusive. And I will tell y'all that for a long time, I wouldn't admit to myself when it got abusive, I would tell people that asked that, oh, when we were in Dallas, things were great. That was a lie. It wasn't great. It was okay. I was real dumb in a relationship. And there are things that I did that was like, what the heck, Dawn? And as crazy as they sound, I will be the first one to admit that I was wrong. It was dumb. It was stupid. I know, get it. I'm aware. I deserve better than that. But the crazy thing about our situation is that he really didn't bring any value to my life. We had some fun times, but it was on my dime. At the time, I thought it didn't bother me. I thought it's not that big of a deal. I don't mind being the breadwinner if you're contributing and you treat me good. That's really all I wanted. All I wanted was somebody to treat me nice. I mean, we were in a relationship and it wasn't all bad all the time. It's just that the bad was bad, and I didn't want to admit that it was bad. And I certainly didn't want to tell anybody it was bad because I was embarrassed, right? On the outside, everything looked like it was just going great. It just, I had this really amazing job. I had relocated and I was just doing it, right? So I don't want to admit that my love life was in a shambles. I didn't want to admit that I fell for a loser. He was a bum. He didn't contribute anything to my life. And then on top of that, he wasn't helping me financially. We had an agreement on the bills. I was the breadwinner, so I paid the rent. He was to pay the electric bill, the cable, and the internet. So we lived in an apartment, right? The bills were all in my name, but he would give me X amount of money out of his check every week. Problem with that is, number one, he wasn't working all the time. In the whole 5 years that I was with him, I don't think he ever held the same job for 1 year. So he was in and out of work all the time. And there would be months that would go by that he would be unemployed. Then when he was working, he wasn't making that much money. So he would get paid once a week and he would give me X amount of money once a week. But let's say, for example, if he's giving me $150, before Friday, before the next payday, he would ask me, can I hold $40? Can I hold $50 until the next paycheck? So really, did you give me $150? So it was kind of like that, I chose to deal with these things. But when you throw in emotional abuse, verbal abuse, I mean, he body shamed me. And he was the type of person who, when he would get upset with me, he would use the things that I was insecure about or things that I may have shared with him in confidence against me in an argument. He would purposefully say the things that I was insecure about to me in a fight to make me feel worse about it. He would start a fight with me so that he could get a reaction out of me. And then based off my reaction, he could use that as an excuse as to why he reacted the way he did. Because it was never his fault. It was never his fault for putting his hands on me. He broke me down as a person. My self-esteem had gotten to be so low. He lied on top of lied on top of lied on top of lied. I mean, he lied about so much. I never forget one time we went to go visit his family. We were all sitting around a bonfire, and one of his family members said about another family member that every time that person opened their mouth, they lying. And he co-signed. I remember that I used to think, you just like him. You lie all the time. He lied about everything. He lied about work. He lied about who he was with, when he was doing something, where he was at. He would lie to his family. I kid you not. He would call his mom and he would be talking to her about what he had been doing the last couple weeks since the last time he talked to her. And he would say things in his story. I'd be in the other room. I could hear him. But he would say things in his story and I would be like, that's not true. Like, I can't believe he said it. I can't believe you're lying to your mom. When the relationship ended, according to his sister, the whole time we were in Texas, he was taking care of me. Now, mind you, he was in and out of work all the time. So I was the one paying the bills. He would give me some money. I was taking care of us. He was in and out of work. So even if you're giving me money when you're working, if you're out of work for 4 months, who you think is paying for that? Who you think is paying for the 2 cars that are sitting outside that are both in my name? Who's paying for the groceries? Who's paying the 2 bills in the house that you're supposed to be paying for? Who's paying for the phone bills? We were supposed to pay for our own phone bills. But if you're not working, how are you paying for that? But he really had his mom to believe, according to his sister, this is What his sister told me is that he had his mom believing that he was some supervisor or manager at a warehouse and he was making all this money and he was doing so well, and the apartment was in his name and he was paying for everything. The cars were in his name, he was paying for everything. He was paying for everything, and I was living off of him. All of that to say, and I'm just giving a snippet about the garbage that I dealt with in this relationship. For me, I stayed because I wanted a baby. I am hearing all these young ladies come out and telling their stories of why they was with someone who they knew was a liar, was verbally abusive to them, etc., etc. And I've only seen a handful of stories recently, but I can imagine that more and more women will start to share their experiences. The first story, I think, was probably not the first, but the first of its kind, the first to be done in the way that it was done. And kudos to that creator for doing it. Kudos to that creator for having the courage to come out and share her experiences. It was brilliant the way that she did it. I think that it has inspired others to come forth. I started my podcast in January, around my birthday. I intentionally did it around my birthday because this year is going to be a new year for me. Actually, last year was a different kind of year for me. If you've watched my other videos, last year was a different kind of year for me. But it triggered the idea for me to start this podcast, to share my experiences, to share my story. Listening to other women come out and share their stories has encouraged me to keep going, right? Because it needs to be out there. There is a message in all of it. If nothing else, for me, it's been a healing process for sure. It is very therapeutic to just talk about what I've been through. But I also hope that someone hears my story and is encouraged by what I've shared to make a decision in their life, whatever that decision is, right? Because I'm going to tell you this. When I was going through my situation, I've noticed this with a lot of stories that have come out lately. These women have they have a phenomenal support system. They have a great support system. They have women, family members, friends around them who care for them, who love them, who would do anything for them. And they were there for them when they needed it. Just speaking from my own experience, I have always had and continue to have a phenomenal support system. But when I was going through my shit, excuse my language, I don't want nobody to know. I don't want anybody to know, and especially my support system. Because like I said in the beginning, I knew I was dealing with someone who wasn't shit. I didn't know in the beginning that he was dangerous, but eventually I knew I was dealing with somebody who was dangerous. I was dealing with someone who didn't have any respect for me. I knew I was dealing with somebody who was a narcissist, who was controlling, who was abusive, who didn't have anything to lose. I knew that he was wrong from the beginning. For no matter what the reason is, I decided to stay with him. I knew he was the wrong person for me. He was the wrong person for me to be dealing with. Period, point blank. He was the wrong person for me to be dealing with, and I knew it. But I didn't want anybody to tell me that. I mean, if I'm being honest with you, I didn't want anybody to tell me that. I moved so quickly with him in the beginning. I didn't want people to tell me, I told you so. I was embarrassed, I was ashamed, and I didn't want anybody to judge me. And I felt like I could figure this out by myself. That is not the right thing to do. But I'm going to tell you that when you're dealing with someone who is manipulative, who is controlling, who is a narcissist, and who is abusive, that's what they want. They want to isolate you from your friends. They want to isolate you from your family. They want to isolate you from the people who care about you the most, because they know that if they can get you away from people who care about you, they got you. And they can get you to do anything they want you to do. And they can do and say anything they want to, and you'll be there. Especially if they're abusive to you. Because a person can only take that for so long before it wears them down. I was so broken and torn down, and my self-esteem was so low. I didn't care about the lies. I always had a suspicion that he was cheating on me. And that's like one of those things that I never want to say. I never, ever wanted to talk about. I know he cheated on me at least once, if not twice. The other times, I don't know that I necessarily could prove it, but I mean, after a while, I didn't even care. I didn't care because I felt like I don't want to deal with him, right? If he was cheating on me or if he was with somebody else, he's somebody else's problem. Yeah, he's still my problem because he's still in the house and I can't figure out how to get him out quietly because, again, I didn't want to tell anybody what I was dealing with. But if he's cheating on me, that means he ain't in the house with me. And I wanted to be alone. I wanted to be left alone. I wanted him to disappear. So anyway, guys, the whole purpose of me doing this video today is, again, it's not to do my own version of who the F did I marry, who the F did I date, who the F did I talk to, who the F was I trying to have a baby with, who the lies he told. I'm not trying to do my own version of that, but I do have my own experiences. I'm encouraged by these stories because as hard as it is, it takes a lot of courage to admit when you've been dumb in a relationship behind a guy. It takes a lot of courage to admit that to yourself. It takes even more courage to say it out loud, to get in front of this camera and tell your story to a bunch of strangers. First of all, knowing how the internet works, that they're going to find that person, that this person could see you, his family members could see you, especially when these people could be dangerous to you. I want y'all to know my ex is a danger to me. It's not going to be hard to find him. I won't be surprised if people do. I won't be surprised if he finds me. At this point though, I care, but I don't care. And what I mean by that is, no, I don't want to be found. I actually have a order of protection for 10 years. He cannot come near me. He cannot try to contact me by any means. And he cannot try to contact my family trying to get in touch with me. He can also not use a friend or a family member to try to get in touch with me. So yeah, it's like that. In addition to that, I went to the police one time, and it was the last time he did something to me. I will go into detail about that particular day and the events that happened after that at another time. But he did me so dirty that I had to report it in order to protect myself. I had left. I got out. It was the day that I left. I got out. I actually drove myself from Texas to Ohio in a 2-day time frame by myself. And I didn't tell anybody that I was on the road until I was out of Texas, which took me 5 hours. I told my mom and I told my sister when I was on my way, and nobody else knew. But he hurt me and he damaged my property and he was in my house. So I reported it to the police and they opened an investigation. They issued an emergency order of protection. Eventually we went to court so that I could have a permanent order of protection, which again is for 10 years. That's been active since December of 2021. And because of what he did to me, he did have criminal charges against him. He's put on probation for 3 years. That judgment went into effect sometime in the summer of 2022. But he got 3 years probation, and it is my understanding that if he violates the probation, he is facing 8 years in jail. So it's like that. I do know how the internet works. I don't want him found because of my own safety. So I do care to that extent. At the same token, I don't care enough to not tell my story. I was really suffering in silence for a long time because I was embarrassed and I was prideful. But even though I didn't want to talk to anybody about it, had I heard someone online sharing their story and realized that there are other people who are dealing with this right now, and that person was able to get out, and here's how they did it, and here's how they've been able to move on with their life since then, it might have encouraged me to move quicker. It might have encouraged me to drop the dirt bag sooner. I might have left him long before it got physical, long before I went broke behind him, long before I put a car in my name. long before I relocated to another city, long before I got involved with his child. Sometimes you see your help come from the place that you least expected it to, right? So I'm gonna keep telling my story. I want to encourage anyone that's out there to keep telling your story. Share your story, because you may be able to help someone who needs you. You may actually be able to help someone who's close to you. You might have a neighbor, a friend, a family member who's going through something that you're going through, or going through something that you went through, and they haven't had the courage to speak up, to share, to get out. And by listening to you share, you can make a difference in that person's life. Continue sharing your story. Continue telling us what you've been through. Continue pointing these behaviors out. I'm not gonna say that I encourage anybody to share their ex. We know how the internet works. Y'all gonna find them. I would ask that you be mindful of doing that, because you don't know how that's going to impact the storyteller. Continue sharing your story, because people need to know what to look out for. People need to know the red flags. Everything is on the internet, and people go to the internet for everything. And with that, I say thank you for joining me today. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I love you guys. Don't forget to like, follow, comment below. Let me know what else you want to hear. And I will see y'all next time. A New Dawn. Love you. Bye.